Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a simple REST API in login and register scenario in Golang. As you can see here, I have made a simple flow on the board, which is self-explanatory because when the user tries to log into our web page or register, it basically send a HTTP request or API that we have made in the server, and then the server will handle all of its credentials, user credentials, and check whether uh, it's correct or not, and then the server will send back a HTTP response back to the client. uh, it could be an error or a success, for example login error or login success. So now I'm gonna start by making our GitHub repository. I'm gonna name this REST API tutorial. Okay, you can copy this. Then we're gonna make our folder for the project. So I'm gonna name this REST API tutorial. Now we're gonna start by structuring our project. Gonna make CMD folder, config, uh, details, types, uh, services, then db. Here in the CMD folder, we're gonna make API folder, and also migrate for migrations. And in this project, we're gonna use makefile to make our migration and executing command lines more easier. Shout out to Tiago because I referenced this project structure from him. And we're gonna start by adding Git to our project. Git add, so git commit git branch. Yeah. Lastly, gonna push okay, we're done. Unit checked. Git status. We're on benchmates and git remote -v. And we're in the correct repository. Okay. We have successfully added Git to our project. And the next step is initialize our Golang project. So go mod init github.com your repository. Okay, I'm gonna start by making our first main.go. In this main.go file, we just basically gonna start the API server here and initialize our DB connection with Postgres later. So start API server, connect to Postgres, or initialize DB. Gonna make API.go package API. I'm gonna make a struct of the API server. Struct is like an object, but a little bit different because you could pass in methods, or yeah, you could pass in methods. So address string, and then I'm gonna make a new constructor. So new API server address string, which will return a pointer to the API server, and then return a pointer to the API server, address, and then now we're gonna make the run method, which would run the server. This will return an error. So here we're gonna create our router. In this project, I'm gonna use Gorilla package to create the router. So here I have store a or some important packages that we're gonna use in this project. So we're gonna get, or we're gonna import the package max dot wait, max dot new router. Now below we're gonna register our service later. Okay, so basically uh I have just made a router, and then it will return uh listen and serve, which basically you can read here. But if you are working in a full stack project, you would like to add a course configuration to your backend, because communications with different ports usually get restricted in the web browser. So I'm going to show you how to configure course configuration here, but I'm not gonna use it in this project because this project is back-end focused. So I'm gonna show you just a little bit. You need to import another package here, the Goji course package. So we're gonna get and see course dot new course options. Now here you can configure some settings. This is the uh, most common setting. String CP. So it is basically allowed your front end origins, which would be localhost 5.3, but it depends on your front end router. So, and then allowed methods, string. So it'll allow common uh, request methods. So I'm gonna just put some common ones. So get, post, delete, and etc. If you want to add another more, and then allowed headers, authorizations. This header is usually passed in the HTTP request. Content type, allowed credentials to, so we're gonna set it true. Then host handler c dot handler the router. Okay. And instead of passing the router here, we're gonna pass the course handler. Now basically this allows us to run full stack project, which would likely to, because the front end and the back end would likely to run on different ports. So you could use these settings to allow your front end to communicate with your back end. But for now, I'm gonna use any client side. So delete this. Okay, and I'm gonna go back to our main and start our server. API server, API server, server. Now we're gonna pass the address that we would like our backend to run. I'm gonna use 8080. So I'm gonna run it. So the beauty of using Golang here, you could import functions or methods from another folder or packages. Because here you can see I'm importing my API, new API server functions from my API module, right? So if error not new, log.fail. And now we're gonna test it. So we'll run cmd main.go. Okay. Okay, as you can see here, we have successfully made a API server, and it's successfully run. So for now, we're gonna close the connection because we can configure some more code. And the second thing, we need to make our database. I'm gonna use terminal to access the Postgres, but you could also use pgadmin UI to access your Postgres. But for this project, I'm gonna use terminal. And make sure you go to your Postgres path in your local system. This is mine, but usually your path will be the same as mine if you didn't change anything while the downloading process. So if you are already in your path, you could just type PSQL -u. This should be capitalized, and then enter your username. Usually your Postgres username by default would be Postgres. So enter your password. Okay, now I'm in the Postgres and I want to see my databases. you could type /l. And now I'm gonna create my database for this project. Create database Postgres. No, not Postgres, but REST API tutorial. Right now, I'm gonna /l again. As you can see here, we have created REST API tutorial database, which is good. Now we want to go to that database or change directory, you could say. So we're gonna type /c your database name tutorial. You are now connected to database REST API tutorial as user Postgres. Okay, we're done creating our database in the Postgres, but now we need to connect our database to your project, right? So in DB, then make db.go file, package db, and gonna make a new constructor to initialize or make our DB. So new Postgres SQL, which would take an argument of connection, and then it will return a pointer to SQL DB, SQL DB, and an error, right? DB error SQL.open. We're gonna use Postgres for this project, so type Postgres here and the connection, handle the error. We're gonna return the error, return nil error, and this if error not nil, return db and nil. Now in the main, so here we're gonna make a ping function. Gonna name this config init db. Gonna pass in our db connection and an error. So here db.ping if error not nil, return error, and not, we can return nil. Here show db if error db connection error not nil, in a log dot beto connection db error. So what this function basically does is checking the connection between our backend and the Postgres. Okay. Now we're missing the dbcon. So I'm going to show you a documentation which explain how to connect Postgres using Golang. So this is the packages. This is the package gitlab.com libpq, and then you could see some documentation of code here, how to connect. Okay, this is the basically the thing that we want to do to connect our backend to Postgres. We need the connection string. Okay, I've just copied it from my repository project, and now you want to pass in the host, the port, the username, the password, db, but we're gonna use env file for it because this information is sensitive type, so we would like to use env file or environment variables for it. So we're gonna make our env.env file. Then we will want to go back to our config, making env.go package config. Now I'm gonna type config struct, and we want the db address, host, port, user, password, db name. Okay, so host, db host, wait, db host string. Then what else? What else we need? Port, db port string, and then user, db user string, db password string, db name, and that's it, right? So I'm gonna make a function here in config. It'll return config. So now for accessing env files in our project in Golang, we would like to import another package called github.com.go.env. Go get, okay, go.env dot load, okay, and we're gonna return config should. Now I'm gonna make a function to retrieve the environment variable values from our .env file. So get env, which will take an argument of key and fallback, which both of them are string, and we will return a string. So if value okay os dot lookup env, and we'll pass in the key from the argument, key, and not okay, or if okay, then we will return the value, but if not okay, we will return the fallback. So for example, if here we need db host and maybe it is sensitive information, so we could type here db host equals, this is the default, I think, default host was for Postgres. Okay, now we're gonna fill the struct db host equals get env. The string will be db port. You should match the key here with the key in the environment variable file, like this, db host, db db host, right? And you will return the fallback if the process of retrieving the value from the env file error, you could return the fallback instead, right? And do this db port get env db port 5432 db user db post press db password get env password your pass db name get env our database name from earlier, so it'll be REST API tutorial. Okay, now we've successfully configured our env file. We could go back to the main file. I'm going to pass in the config.env, which will run the function, okay, and it will return all of our config, so we could access it here. So env file config env dot db host, and then etc config. Okay, now I'm gonna handle the error. Okay, after all that done, we're gonna try to connecting to our database. So we're gonna uh go run cmd again, main.go error connecting to Postgres exit status. So I found the error. Actually, you need to import another package for connecting to Postgres from the documentation before or earlier that I showed you here. So you would have to import this and go get, and I have made some logging updates here in our main.go. So if we tried it again, see, we are successfully connected to our database, and it's listening to port 8080. So everything works just fine. It's good. Okay, I have copied makefile script for running makefiles in my command lines, but you could copy it also. I'll leave the code source later in the video, so you could just type make build, and it'll make the build directory here, which is bin go build. You could specify the directory output. I specified as bin and REST API, right? and it'll build the main.go file, which are all here. Main.go, right? Okay, now we have to add another main.go in the migrate folder. Main.go. Okay, here basically I'll make a configuration to connecting my migrations to our database. So I've just copied another code which basically initialize our migrations so we could access the migration methods later. And you would actually need to import another packages. Okay, now I'm gonna handle the error. Log dot fatal. Now we're gonna take the last arguments or the last line of scripts of command line later. So os dot args length os dot args -1. So what this basically does is to check if our command lines ends with up or down, and if it is up, gonna do some migrate up here, and if it has an error, it will print line the migrate error, or if it is success, we're gonna just log the success message here. Okay, now in the make file, I forget to mention, if you run this command make migration, it'll make a new migrations folder which we could edit later. So if I type make migration migrate create SQL directory cmd, so it'll make a migrations file in the migrate folder here, and it'll make a new folder called migrations here. You could change the folder structure whatever you like, but I'm going to use this make migration, specify a name. Oh, I forgot, make migration. I will call this users. Okay, as you can see here, a new folder just created, and we get some migration file. So here we could edit some SQL queries here. So we could type queries here. So job table if exists users. Create table if not exists. Create table if not exists users. Okay. Gonna type ID or user ID. So serial primary key. And then I'm gonna make this simple. So this is the username. Username. This is string, so varchar 55 not null, and then I need the password or email, same varchar not null, right, and then email, not email, password, varchar 55 not null, and then lastly created add the timestamp default current timestamp. Okay. Oh, I forgot to add not null here, and also unique. So the email in our database, the user emails will would be unique, all of the rows. Okay. So now we're gonna try to migrate up. Migrate up. Migrate up success. And go back to our terminal and see any database. As you can see here, we have successfully created a user table. Now that's it for all the configuration part, the migration part, making the API server part. Now we're gonna make the business logic here on the server. Okay, first we're gonna close all this file and gonna make user services. Wait. User services folder. Inside it, we're gonna make routes.go and then store.go. Okay. All of these Golang folder structure is I reference from Tiago, so shout out to him. You could check his channel. So gonna make our first business logic here. Package users, right? Then type handler struct, which would have a store types dot user store. So before we continue this, I'm gonna make a store in the types folder. So type.go package types. We're gonna initialize an interface so we could use it later or access the methods later. So type user store interface. I'm gonna add methods here later, but go back to the routes. So types dot types. Make sure you access the correct types or to the correct packages. Here you import your local packages from GitHub. Types here, then user store. Initialize a new constructor. So func new handler, it will return a pointer. So it will take an argument of store with of type user store. So we're gonna return a pointer. So here I'm gonna register our API endpoints. So we're gonna make methods here to our handler struct. So register routes, which would take an argument of router with type max.router router. Okay. Now I'm gonna handle all of the handler functions. So router.handle func. Gonna specify our endpoints here for the login endpoints, and here is the handler. So handle login, and also gonna make handle the register endpoint, and also the register handler handle register. I'm gonna make the handler below here. So it is a method also to our handler struct, which is handle login, and it takes arguments of response writer and SCPP request. Okay, now for the register part, we're gonna expect some payload, right? So we're gonna go to the types and set a payload or struct. So the type user payload, no, register payload, which is a struct, and the register payload, it matches with the columns, the users columns. So it'll take ID, username, email, password, but this will not include this because it'll automatically create it, and also this ID. So we're gonna pass this. Okay, if done set a type. So what is this mean? We have initialized a register payload struct that we can use later, and for this we specify the JSON uh value, the username, or the JSON key. We set it as username, email, and password. About to validate, we need to import another package. So I'm gonna use the validate here in utils.go package. So package utils var validate validator dot new validator dot wait, let's see this. So I'm gonna import this first. Get. Okay, we're done importing now. And here in the utils package, I'm gonna specify some functions that could make us easier to parse JSON. So as you can see, our project, we don't use any Golang frameworks, right? So I'm going to specify the parsing here. Func parse JSON, which will take an argument of HTTP request and also a value, so that we could parse it there, any, and then an error. So first thing we're gonna check if the request body is nil. If it is, so we're gonna return empty error missing request body. And if not, we're gonna return JSON decode JSON u decoder r.body and code value. So what this basically does is it'll so the decoder is the r.body, right? So the requests, and it'll go to the value later. I will pass in a pointer so that this body is in JSON, and it will be decoded to the value to our Golang programming language, right? So here I'm gonna func write JSON. It'll take HTTP response writer and status and value also, and error, not error, but okay, like this. So I'm gonna write header dot status dot add content type to be application JSON, and we can return JSON in new encoder, which is here, and encode the value, right? This I think will return an error as well. Func right error So I have made right error functions which could return or send an HTTP response back to the client, which will take response writer and status, and then it'll return a map of string key and the value of string. So it'll send an object like, so the key will be error and the error will be string because I've passed in as a string error.error. Okay, now we go back to the routes. We'll specify here. As I said before, so it'll parse the request body from the front end, and then it will encode it to my variable here that I initialize an empty variable of type register payload. So make sure the variable type is the same as the payload later. Okay, so let's say if a user logs in with username, email, password values, it'll pass in as JSON, right? So it'll encode it as our Go programming language to our payload here. And also forget you must capitalize functions if you want to use it in a different package. Like here I'm coding in users package, but the functions or the variable is in the utils package. So make sure you capitalize your variables functions if you want to use it on a different package. So I will pass in the payload struct and check error not nil, errors, error. So error.operator.variation errors, and then we will return the errors to variation errors. So errors like error get request. Okay, now here we're gonna do some logic here. So if we are registering a new user to our database, we're gonna check if the user exists or they exist or not. So check if user already exists, and then if not, we could register our new user. Oh no, we must make a password. So hash password, right? And then lastly, we can register our new user to our database, right? Check. Now all of the methods that are using the database, I'm gonna make it here on the store.go. So package users and then package store, right? Package store. I'm gonna initialize new user, a new store struct, and it will take our DB, right? str.db. Then I'm gonna make a new constructor, new user dot, right? We'll also return a pointer, an argument scale to b, right? And here we're gonna return the pointer. And after this, we're gonna make the logic here. So func, I'm gonna make a method to store, and then check user for get user by email, right? So I need an email here, an argument later, string, and an error. I'll return an error. So here, before we go further, I'm going to show you documentation for querying SQL Postgres in Golang. So here in the documentation for querying data in Golang, as you can see here, we are trying to retrieve a user. So we're gonna try to retrieve a single row in our table, and as you can see here in the documentation for querying for a single row. Note, in Postgres, you would like to pass arguments, but instead of question mark, you would like to type $1 and so on. Okay, so here I'm gonna pass in, I'm gonna copy this, but I'm not gonna use this query. Instead, I'm gonna initialize a new user and a new empty users. So var user new types dot user, which I haven't set. So we go back to types. So type user struct. Okay. Now this validation, we don't need the JSON. And I have ID of string and created app, which is time.time. So now we must match the user struct values with the users columns. So ID, username, email, password, created app, ID, username, email, password, created app, right? So sorry to my key, I think it's not a string, I think it's an integer. Let me go back to the store and user types user. Okay, now get user. So I'm sorry, we think we should return user here. So user a pointer, right? Pointer to user type user. Okay. Now if error, we can select our database here or access our DB, or it's not it's db.query role. Now I don't, this not my query, so delete this. Select all from users where email equals wait, where email equals $1, right? But if you want to pass in another parameters here, for example, or and blah blah blah, you could pass in another parameter, but you must make the parameter different, 1, 2, 3, and so on from users. And then I think this make me confused. Wait, delete this. Then go here, dot scan, and then not new, handle if error equals SQL no rows. It means this: if we query and select from users where email is, for example, henry@gmail.com, and the database returns no rows, it means that the user is not exist, right? This logic, but now need to pass the argument. So where email is email, right? Email, and then scan. Now scan, the scan method here is expecting us to scan the return value of the row. So this will return this, right? But we need to what's the best word, export or import it to our user here, right? So scan user.id, user.username, and user.email, user.password, user.app, right? Now if the database returns no rows, it means that the user isn't exist. So return, I think this is not an error, I'm sorry. I want it to be boolean, right? Or no, I will not return. One error. Okay. So return nil, and we get error f. Uh, are returned, right? But if the error is something else, the querying process, we must handle that error also. So return nil, and the error, no rows. I think I'm not gonna return this as an error because the querying process actually success, but the database returns no rows. So this should be nil also. So no rows. Query database error, right? So here, if I get a return or a user, the user will be exported to my empty user here, a pointer to type user. So now I can return user and nil. So we go back to the routes, check if user already exists. So user error, it's h.store. Now we need to add these methods to the types interface, the user interface. So get user by email, which take a beginning of email string and returns a pointer to user and an error. Now we can use the methods now. Now we're gonna pass the payload email, right? And check if error not null. If error not null, we're gonna return and write back to the clients an error, right? This status internal server error, error querying database. I'm just gonna pass the error. I'm gonna pass the error. Okay. So this check if the querying process itself has an error or not. But if not, we're gonna check if a user is exists or not, right? So user, if user not new, that means the user is already exists and we don't want that. So I'm gonna return utils write error get request because the request is not good. So empty error f user already exists, right? But wait, if users, I'm sorry, if user not nil, but if user is nil, then it could register the new user. But before that, we don't want to pass a plain password to our database, because if our database got leaked, our users password will also get leaked, and we don't want that as a plain string. We want it to be a secret, so I'm gonna make here hashed password and error. I'm gonna make new folder. I'm gonna make where was it? In utils, right? I'm gonna make password.go package. Not here, I think. I'm gonna make a new folder in the main. I'm gonna call it auth. So password.go package auth func create hash password. So it'll take a plain string, right? Plain pass, and then it'll return a string also. So hashed pass error bcrypt. Now for this we need to import another package. So let's see this one. Okay, so I'm gonna import this here, and I'm gonna get here, right? Okay, I think it's run to decrypt generate. Okay, I'm sorry, I think this is okay. So we're gonna take in a plain string and gonna make it as byte. So pass byte coming a byte when pass, and gonna pass in the pass byte to here. Pass byte and decrypt default cost. If ever nothing, we'll return nothing. Or we could put an error also. Right? Error nothing and error, right? Let's say undefined pass byte. Okay. Now return the hash passed as a string and nil. Okay. Now here I'm gonna also create a compare password for the login later. So it'll take a plain pass string and also the hash password, right? So I'm gonna return error. So error, error equals decrypt or compare password. So as you can see, if you don't quite understand what are the methods from the packages, you could see here over it. Where hash and password compare duplicate hash password if it's possible plain text, right? So hash password as byte. So I'm gonna pass in the hash password as byte. Hash passed and also the plain pass as byte as well. Byte plain pass. And what does it return? An error, as you can see here. So if error not nil, return error, right? If error not nil, then errors. If not, will return nil. Okay, now here we could use the auth package and create a hash password and a plain string, which would be our payload port password, and also, and we're gonna handle the error. Yep. Utils. So now we could register a new user by simply going back to here, func, going back to the store, and we're gonna wait, store. Let's restore store. Gonna make a new method to the store. Uh, create user. I need a user with user, and then I'm gonna pass an error, right? So I'm gonna if error reports to s.db.exact insert wait, I forgot the query. So here is the query. I'm sorry, I forgot it. So it's basically the query, and now we're gonna execute the query. So s.pd.exact query, and then I don't need the ID thing. I just need the username, email, password. Okay, now I'm gonna pass we're gonna fill the arguments with these parameters. So I'm gonna username, email, user dot email, user dot password, right? And check and handle the error. What is this wrong? Let's go result. So it returns two results. So we cannot do it like this. So I'm gonna ignore the results. Handle the error instead. If error no, turn error. If not, if there's no error, I'm returning this as new, and it'll show that the execution of this query is a success, right? So uh, error goes to h.start. Now I'm gonna need to pass this to the interface, right? Now could use the methods now. Create user. Now I'm gonna make a new user and fill it with what is it? Types. Not ID, but I just need this username payload dot username dot email payload dot email. What's this error? No variables. Okay. Yes. What do you need again? Password. Why don't I also pass this ID and create at? Because it'll be created automatically in the database. Because here on our migrations file, migration, where is it? Migration. cmd migrations zip. It'll create automatically there in database, and also this. Okay, so skip this. Now if error not null, gonna return and utils out error internal server error because something's wrong while the query process. Okay, then if there's no error, we can send a success response back to the client. So http okay, then gonna map this response like this. So it's gonna register. I'm gonna make it boolean. So true. Okay, Oh, I forgot about this hash password. So instead, we passing the plain password here using the payload. I'm gonna pass the hash password instead. Right now, what is the error now? What's this? This big error. Okay, password. Now we're gonna start trying to register a new user to our database. So make out, but where's my command? Make run. So I'm gonna test this with target client, and I'm gonna make a new request to my backend port. So localhost 8080. So this will be the register endpoint, right? Register. But before that, I forgot about one thing. We must initialize the new handler and the store in the main function or in the API. So we're gonna register our service here now. So user store equals to user dot store new store, and we're gonna pass in the DB, right? But God, I think the API server needs another value. So this DB is sql.db sql.db, right? So I'm gonna add another argument here, sql.db, right? db db, and I'm gonna go to my main here and pass in the db like this. So after we initialize this dbcon, now we're gonna add the user star here in the API server, passing sdb register, right? User handler, users dot new handler, users new handler, and then we pass in the user store, and we're gonna pass the router to the register routes methods. So router. Okay, now we're gonna test by sending a HTTP request using Thunder client. I'm gonna fill this endpoint, which points to our backend register. So add a header, content type, application.json, and then the body. The body must be exactly like the user register payload, right? Okay, let me close all of this. So types, body, user register payload. So username, let's call it Andrew, and then the email gmail.com. Wait, and then the password, let's fill it low 123 dots, right? Okay, now we must turn on the server first. Close cls make run. Okay, http localhost 8080 register. We're gonna try to send this as a post method. Oh, I forgot about something. I'm sorry. This we need to specify the methods using the grill.max router. Uh, we specify this as posts and also the register also, because we expect some value to be sent by the front end. So post and restart the server, make run. Okay, now we're gonna try to send. As you can see here, our HTTP request is success, and I get the response back from the register endpoint handler right here, and I get the response which is registered true, right? And we could see our user created in our database. So let's just select all from users, and a new user has been created successfully. So this a simple REST API concept that you can implement to your project, or you can learn. And for the business logic for the login is quite the same, and I'll do it faster, and I'll fast forward when I get the code ready. Okay, see you. I'm back, and I'm sorry, there was a mistake, because I changed the email to hashed password instead of payload of email, and you didn't see the password getting hashed. So you can fix this. So it should be payload dot email, not hash password, and this part password is hash password. And for the login logic, it is actually quite similar. Like, make a empty variable of payload which expects login user payload, which is here. So I'm expecting just email and password, not a username. And parse JSON, right? Parse the payload JSON, and then validate it. And I haven't explained what the validate to. So it's basically here. We set up the JSON to be username and validate required. So if the field is not filled yet, an error will occur, because I handle the validation of the payload. So it checks whether the field username is exists or not in the HTTP request, right? So if this success and there's no error, we'll go here to get user, or check if user exists like before. So user, now the difference is this: if user is nil, or user doesn't exist, right, then you cannot log in, right, because the user basically doesn't exist. The difference between register, since it checks whether the user is exists or not, is exist, then the user cannot make a same account, you could say that, right? Now, if the user is nil, it will send back a response of error, user doesn't exist. Then finally check the password using the compare password. Using the compare password here, and then if it's returns no error, we'll go through here, which is the successful response. So we send back a response of login success. It is in a map structure, so I'm gonna try this again one more time. So I'm gonna restart the server, make run, and let's register a new user. Register through, and you can see here I register a new user, right? And the password is already hashed, right? It's not lol123 dots, but it is hashed already, and there's a credit at. So now we're gonna try to log in, and we don't need this field because we don't expect a username field, so it's just gonna check whether, wait, let me make this an error. That's right. I'm gonna save it just lol, and this is the email and the Gmail, right? Now if I send login, wrong password, right? If I change this with a different email, which it doesn't exist in the database, it should return user doesn't exist. So that means our code's working. Now for the successful one, let's send this and login success. Okay, so obviously this is not the best way to handle login and register scenario, because as you can see here, we're missing authentication, which can be implemented, for example OAuth or GOIT token. If you want to know about GOIT or other authentication, in future I'll make a video for authenticating your routes in the backend, for example using GOT token or OAuth. And yeah, this is it. This is a simple REST API using Golang and PostgreSQL. So I hope you understand and like the video. See you guys later.